There are different ways in which you can add data. One way is to use add-doc. This again is one of these functions that you are going to need to be importing from Firebase/Firestore. Add-doc takes two parameters. If you want to use add-doc, what you pass is a collection, a reference to a collection. This is a reference to a collection is created with a collection function. So collection also has to be imported from Firebase/Firestore. Simplest way to do that, you provide the database. So this is a root level collection. And then you can provide the name of the collection. So that's the first thing, the add doc. And then the second thing is the document you actually want to add. You can provide the fields. And this will then add a document. Adding a document occurs asynchronously. Let's have a brief tutorial about this. So what that means is that when add-doc returns, the document hasn't necessarily been added. Instead, what you can do is provide a then, and then a callback function that will be called back when the add is completed. You'll get back a document, and you can then do what you want with the document. For instance, this document has a data function which returns the actual data. So there are other methods in here to return metadata about it. So let's say doc.data.cuisine. It turns out when we're going to be using React, we're going to actually be using some React hooks that mean we don't necessarily have to be worrying about this asynchronous nature. But we'll come back to that. So this is a way we can add a document. Every document has a unique ID that's used to reference it. And in this case, the document is going to be assigned a unique ID. If you want to provide the unique ID, that's possible as well. You just don't use add-doc. Instead, you use set-doc. So let's look at that. So instead of providing a collection reference, you provide a document reference. You're saying, I know exactly where this document needs to go, including its unique ID. As opposed to here, where we're saying, I want to put it in the collection, you make up some unique ID for it. So for setDoc, we use a document reference, and doc is the function that creates a document reference. It'll take our database. It'll take our top-level collection name. And then it'll also take our ID for this document. Let's say we had an ID. ID equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or something. Really, we wouldn't use this. We would actually generate some unique ID. Instead, maybe we really want to use generate unique ID function. And then, again, we provide our document name and our cuisine. It's also often handy to provide actually an ID field in with your data. It's possible to get your ID from the metadata of the document, but it's sometimes simpler to just put it right inside. So we could choose to put in the ID here. Here we couldn't put in the ID because we didn't know the ID at this point. I guess we could have somehow updated the document here once the document has been added. Go find out what its ID is and then add an ID field. But in this case, since we already know the ID, we can just add it right here. Again, this is an asynchronous function. And so if we want to know when the document has actually completely been added, we would need to put a then here. We can replace existing documents as well. If we wanted to take this document that we've created in the past, let's say, and replace it, we could just call setDoc again, passing in the document reference, so passing in how we get to that document. So what's the collection, what's its ID, and then just provide a replacement object. Now, sometimes we just want to be updating one field, and then we don't want to go to the work of providing the entire object. So we can also update documents. In this case, we can use updateDoc, yet another function that's going to need to be imported. And we will use document reference. If we're using a document over and over, of course, we would put this document reference into a variable. And then let's just say we're trying to get this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 document. So we want to update a particular field. Let's say we want to update the cuisine. So we've decided IHOP, the International House of Pancakes, is really more a fine dining cuisine. So, if they change their focus a little bit. We are just putting one field here. What will happen then is all the remaining fields will still be there, and we'll modify this one field. This allows us the ability to modify or to add fields. What's the last thing we might want to do? Well, we know how to add a document, and we can either use add_doc or we can use setDoc. I prefer using setDoc because I like creating the IDs on the client. And then we can change a document with update_doc. And then finally, we can remove a document. To remove a document, we'll use delete_doc. And again, we'll pass in the document reference. I'm not going to repeat it. Just say here document reference. We can get the document reference just again by, let's say, doc of database, collection name, and then the document's ID. That gives us everything we really need to know about adding, modifying, deleting individual documents. Also, notice we never actually created the restaurant's collection. There's no need to do that. Just the first time you create a document in a collection, it'll automatically create the collection for you. Similarly, a collection is deleted when you delete the last document from it. So there is no function to delete a collection. Instead, if you want to delete an entire collection, just delete all the documents that are in that collection.